Hey guys, Shane here at Tank Under Miniatures with Josh.
Hello again.
Today we're doing another discussion episode. I should really give a title for this, like an actual podcast. But all the good ones are taken, like the Vox and the Void and stuff like that. So it's just another discussion video. That's all it is. Going over which dwarf faction is the most powerful. We're just looking at scale of power throughout different settings, different ways they've been written, different power levels for technology levels and stuff like that.
It's a pretty broad selection we brought up this time, isn't it?
Yeah, because it is like it's so much greater than it used to be. Because I remember when I was a kid playing Warcraft 2. I was like, yeah, I loved how the dwarves were there. I thought they were cool, everything. And then Warcraft 3, yeah, they're just there as auxiliary. I always wanted Warcraft 3 with an actual dwarf army there. And you can play it now with mods. I've seen a few of them. They're pretty cool, but a lot of things never put real focus in them. And I never saw that till I started looking at Warhammer, that there was this, people looking into it and liking it. And nowadays there's a whole heap of choice.
So many choices.
Yeah, I still want to play the, apparently the Lord of the Ring ones, the survival dwarf one where you take back Mori or whatever.
Yeah, I've seen that one. That does look good.
It got bad reviews in the start, but apparently they've fixed a lot of it.
You gotta give these people time to cook.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll have to play that at some point. They've fixed it up, so I'll definitely give that a try. So let's look at the starting off with sort of the origins of it, because I always thought it was Scandinavian folklore that it comes with, and it is like a Norse thing, but apparently it's also Germanic as well, the Germanic fairy tales, where you had these small bearded men. They weren't really magical, they just like building stuff. But yeah, in Norse mythology, they became more warrior-esque, and they had had greater strength in that. Because I remember in there was one of the Marvel TV shows where, of course, Thor was in it, and Tony Stark, when he gets sent to Asgard or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he gets dropped down in the dwarfs, and they basically make him some Iron Man suit because he lost his.
Yeah, and just making your Iron Man suit out of any sort of randomized material is what Tony Stark does, but when someone else like a dwarf makes you a suit of armor like that, you can't say no, and then it just is always overpowered, and you gotta love that. Exactly.
So it still sort of exists in its normal sense of its mythology type setting, but it's really come a long way from there. And that's mostly Tolkien. Mostly Tolkien just put his... Same thing we did with elves, because elves weren't tall and beautiful before Tolkien. They were they were kind of a menace.
Yes.
So, yeah, you look at them and you think, all right, that's the base. That's where it came from. They're just, like, trying to hide from people, pretty much. So then I'd say on the power level, we're looking at Dwarf Fortress. How long has Dwarf Fortress actually been around?
Oh, I don't know. I think I remember some cave paintings about Dwarf Fortress.
Because I remember back talking about it like when I was first around Monash. So that was like over 15 years ago.
Yes.
And people were still talking about the very basic one. And that basic one lasted a long time.
It's not to say that Dwarf Fortress dwarves are weak. They're very capable builders. They're very capable crafts dwarves. They're not really in the business of roaming and conquering. They're not really in the business of empire building per se, other than just, this is my mountain, get off of it.
Pretty much. The whole game is pretty much, it's a city building sort of simulator, and a resource management and people management. Like, you can go the whole game without sort of waging war. You can build like people to defend, train your guys up, but you don't even have to do that sometimes. What's the one we watch? Krug Smash, yes. Oh man, that's such a good page.
He does good drawings too.
Oh, he does. I love it. I love the personality he gives all the dwarfs. So it's the whole Dwarf Fortress. It's more a story of these dwarfs like coming together and making a city. It's not so much about how strong they are. It's about how productive and prosperous they are.
Exactly.
So I'd say that's that's where you put Dwarf Fortress. And it is a pretty clear, like, it's cemented itself in, like, dwarf acknowledgement. Like, most people know what Dwarf Fortress is now.
Yeah.
Most gamers, so, yeah. Then you'd be looking at, like, Lord of the Rings style, the actual Tolkien one. Because, of course, the way he wrote them as, I think, saying they're not heroic so much, they're not like humans, they don't have the same ambitions. Because generally they, like I said, they just live in holes in the ground.
Yeah, basically. And the closest that they had to any kind of great works was what we saw, at least in The Hobbit and described to us, the city of Erebor, which that was phenomenal architecture, but certainly, not that much better than what you could do in Dwarf Fortress. And Erebor got kind of wrecked. That's rather the point of the story.
I mean, same with Moria, because you see it, it's so engraved. The holes are massive. They mine from, like, so many stories up, and just to make these pillars.
Yeah. And
it's all very finely done. It's a lot of hard work, but they're never really able to...
They can't hold it.
Yeah. They're not strong enough, and they do seem pretty strong in some sense, because, yeah, they're big, they're thick, but...
We like us a thick dwarf.
Yeah. They can't seem to ever, like, put themselves... They're always, like, the way the elves are in a state of decline. The dwarves were never really... Because I don't think they were... Yeah, they weren't really sort of set to exist.
Yeah.
They were one... Because who's the main... I forget the Byron... I don't know. I watched some...
I can't remember.
Yeah, there's one main head god in their universe.
Durin.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, one god made them and said, hey, these are going to be on things. And then their head god said, hey, you're not supposed to have those. And he's like, but I like them. And he's like, all right, I guess I'll give them life. You can have them, I guess. They weren't part of, like, a big plan. So they sort of just existed out of just one god sort of liking them.
Sometimes one god's all you need.
Well, exactly. And I'll get into that, where that sort of comes into attention later as well.
Now, this is where we actually start to see some degrees of technological innovation.
Yeah, like they are good tacticians, because you saw that in The Hobbit when they did a shield wall with spears.
Dwarven cavalry, who'd have figured?
Yeah, I love that. The goat riders. Yeah. That was so fun. All the clippity-cloppity.
And we see some interesting tools that they've developed, like on the back of one of their chariots, they had a repeating crossbow.
Yeah.
And the good old arrow-catching twirly-whirlies.
Yeah, the big ballista that just, the bow catcher.
Yeah, completely invalidates elven ranged warfare. It's great.
Yeah.
So I say completely, like, open battlefield warfare.
Yeah, because you can see when they sort of then got into melee, I guess you see that in Lord of the Rings the whole time with Legolas and Gimli. Legolas is pretty much... Like, he's soloing most things himself, while Gimli is sort of struggling to... I think they got the same numbers in the end, but it's a very different fighting style they sort of have.
Well, say what you will. Gimli has to do some pretty heavy work, because Legolas always gets a head start with his bow.
There you go. So, yeah, I mean, in the tabletop game, you had I think you get crossbows, you get some ranges... it's mostly like pikemen you get for your battle line. You don't get any like wizardry or anything like that. You get technology that's more akin to like the Romans. You get sort of a Roman level of industrial combat in this fantasy setting, which is more than, I guess, most of the humans.
Yeah, exactly.
Lord of the Rings always seemed weird because there's like 1,000 years has passed since this age. They haven't developed at all. They were sitting there for 1,000 years just doing the same thing.
Look, one guy invented gunpowder and they killed him for it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because they had gunpowder, the guy exploded, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. That made a real big splash.
Because the elves are just sort of hanging around playing music, not really doing anything.
Getting ready to leave, honestly.
I guess people are just dying of plague really fast.
Yeah, that tends to happen.
And the dwarves are just... All right, what do we do for the next couple hundred years? Let's just mine from the ceiling down to the floor and just see how long we can make these pillars.
Yep.
That'll keep us busy for the next 300 years.
Yeah, turns out when you find the Balrogs down the bottom, that'll keep you busy a bit longer.
Oh yeah, let's just dig until we dig too deep and kill ourselves.
Oh dear.
So they weren't and that was the thing. That was their greatest flaw, their greed, and they weren't thinking in long terms.
I'd wager that Lord of the Rings dwarves are less capable when it comes to facing down horrors like dragons and demons, but they have a formalized military and the technology to back that up, and that makes them more powerful than Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah, that's true. They do have that whole sort of mindset and everything, but still, they couldn't take out a dragon.
Nope.
They couldn't take out a demon.
Nope.
They could barely take out any kind of orcs.
Heaven forbid they bring a cave troll.
Oh yeah. One cave troll, because you needed the whole party with different people to sort of work it.
Exactly.
So, while they're cool, I still love them, but they're definitely not very strong in terms of Lord of the Rings themselves. So, here's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're looking at Blizzard Warcraft. Of course, Warcraft. I was going to say World of Warcraft, but it's not just the World of Warcraft. It's the whole Warcraft. Actually, what's the planet called?
Oh, now you're asking me questions. I do know. I've been out of Warcraft for so long.
Yeah, I used to love it. I used to have like the Warcraft 2 because it came with the booklet, and it had all the history and lore in it. I used to read that back to front back when I was like 10. So yeah, whilst they are sort of more technologically inclined, I mean, they got guns.
They got guns.
They're able to fly because they've managed to, they have griffins.
I mean, the flying machine's technically been around since Warcraft 1. It's been
Were
around
they?
a while. Yeah.
I don't remember them Warcraft 1. Or did they just mention them?
It's just a flying machine back then. They didn't mention dwarves.
Oh yeah, because in the second one, because you have the gnomish inventor, Warcraft 2, that was a gnome one, and then by 3, the dwarves stole the technology.
Yep, absolutely.
So the gnomes had all the technology, but not the strength. Yeah. So it was sort of more in the warrior sense still, because I mean, in WoW, you play as a fighter, a paladin. In classic WoW, you couldn't play as a wizard.
No.
Now, of course, you can because they don't want to take away options for people or something. I don't know. I've never played WoW. I don't want to.
Yeah, I can't either.
But pretty much in the games, they're always seen as like support. It's more the alliance, and the more you see of the alliance in battles and stuff, it's generally always humans. Night elves are always sort of doing their own thing. Same with the other elves. They were all sort of supporting these humans. So I guess it's another thing about numbers. I guess there was just a lot more humans than there were dwarves.
And to take a bit of a hard right from all the other dwarven factions we've seen so far, there really is no heavy frontline forces that the dwarves show in these games. They've got their marksmen, that's great, and they've got a mountain king typically. So most of the time it's the humans on the front line, while the tougher, more stoic dwarves are ranged fighters.
Pretty much. And the other weird thing is, like I said, they invented... So they have their siege engines, they have their tanks, they have flight, but they don't seem to be doing anything else. They could use their technological advantage to really ramp up a technology level better than anyone else. But I guess they still don't really have magic.
Yeah.
And I guess when you have magic, you can just teleport a group of things just across the world. It doesn't really matter what technology you have, and they're sort of kept out of that to an extent.
That said, in your average alliance city, please explain to me, in the face of all the technological prowess of the dwarves and the gnomes, why they're still using lit torches for light. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, you've got these... What are these tanky things called again?
Oh, they were called steam tanks, but then they had to change them to siege engines because our good friends at Games Workshop said, hey, that's our thing. You took that. You had your chance.
Yes. Well, we don't like to argue in that direction around
No,
here.
so that was funny. They had to change some names when they went from Warcraft 3 to Frozen Throne. That was fun.
Looking at it with the siege engine the way that it is, like, it's got an internal combustion engine, and yet everyone else is still running around on horses.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why don't they can invent cars now? They can have cars, they can have planes. Why are they still their own thing? Why are they working for the humans essentially?
Someone out there's got a legal system that just prevents dwarves from doing anything. I blame the Dreadlords.
Oh yeah, it's probably them. They're vampires. They're like
They're awful.
Yeah, they're behind all these schemes.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like I said, they never really had a chance to shine on their own.
It's a good cause being held back.
Yeah, pretty much. And they sort of, like I said, if they pushed more into technology level, but yeah, they're still in a mix of halfway between their, brave warrior sort of mindset, where they're like, yeah, we'll ride on the back of griffins and we'll throw our like Thor-esque hammers down. But yeah, if they're trying to do both at the same time, I guess. So it doesn't help them.
No.
So yeah, Warcraft is still more powerful than Lord of the Rings, though,
Yes.
by a mile. Then of course we're looking at Dungeons and Dragons dwarfs. Your ones from either Forgotten Realms, so Faerun, or you got your Eberron, or even Pathfinder. The weird thing about that, so you got a lot of ones that, they're pretty strong. Their main thing is, they're all, like, especially in 3rd edition, they all had martial training. So it's pretty much assumed from the start, like the way you see dwarves grow up, they grow up in a dwarf hold, they're taught, they're part of a militia, they're taught to fight because they know they'll have to defend their hold, but they're not really encouraged to go anywhere.
No, exactly. And like, even in 5e, and I'm not entirely, I haven't read 5.5 myself, but all the dwarves have medium armor proficiency and the capacity to use a couple of martial weapons, which really no one else has that full breadth of training available.
Yeah, if you're just a lonely dwarf who's just a miner, you're still better than some human peasant who's just used a pitchfork for his life.
Exactly.
You're already at a bit of an advantage there. And while as they don't encourage magic, you can definitely have magic. There are plenty of wizard dwarfs out there. You have more clerics. Clerics is more thing, which can be just as powerful in a lot of cases.
Oh, yes.
So the thing about that, though, so if you look in, I mostly know the Forgotten Realms history and everything, because you had like around the North Mountains and everything before you get to the 10 towns. That's where a lot of dwarf holds are, and they survive for the most part. One does get completely overrun by orcs, and they just have to lose it. And that becomes a new whole orc city. That was in the whole Drizzt novel series. I've read all of those. They're great. Because, I mean, King Bruno there, he's, like, great. He's battled everything. He soloed. There was a shadow dragon. He, like, jumped on its back. He hacked it.
As you do.
Yeah, but that was more of a group effort, though. But he was there to sort of enchant weapons and stuff. They never really do stuff on their own. So, and that's the thing with Forgotten Realms. It's so much, it all comes down to the hero stories. It never comes down to a group stories. So every race, every like person in the race has the exact same potential as like another race.
Yeah, there's no great dwarven empire facing off against a great orcish empire. There's no huge political machinations. There's no border shifts. It's just, we're all sat where we're sat. We're just going to let a couple adventurers run around and do everything.
Pretty much. And yeah, you can do a whole adventure. Because I know in Pathfinder, there's a whole campaign where you can retake a whole dwarf hold that's been taken over by vampires. We played that. That was really fun. I like that a lot. But yeah, overall, like no one's... Because at the end of the day, you can have a character that can rise to godhood. Essentially, that's sort of the point of the game, is you just become so powerful, you ascend all sort of normal moralities and abilities. That's what you're aiming for. So it doesn't really matter if there's a faction can never become more powerful, because just one person can learn epic level spells, and that faction is gone. And especially, I think humans outnumber dwarves and other races by humans are just the most prolific in the whole setting. Because if you look at the greater deities of Forgotten Realms, you have so many more. You only have one greater deity for the dwarves. You have Moradin. That's about it. And then you have classed lesser deities. But if you look at the power levels of greater deities, you have Chauncula, you have Helm, Like, they're all humans. Even Soon, I think, is on the same power level as Moradin.
Yep.
Goddess of love. So, yeah, when you have basically one greater god for your species, and another species has, like...
a whole pantheon.
Yeah, a whole pantheon of greater deities, of magic and everything.
It doesn't really compare.
No, so even though you have the potential to literally do anything like anyone else, it sort of makes it, kind of not a point.
So, D&D style dwarves can be as powerful as anyone else, but once again sold short.
Yeah, there you go. Short. Classic. So yeah, that's what I'd say about your dungeon, your Forgotten Realms ones. Classic dwarfs there. Now we look for our favorite dwarves of all time is Warhammer dwarves, Warhammer Fantasy. As we were discussing before, it's probably the most expanded upon of all dwarf races. I was going to sort of touch on what's the new one out? Not Age of Mythology, Age of Wonder.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one. Because I played Age of Wonder 3, and I played it as dwarves. And pretty much I built a bunch of steam tank things, and I was like, all right, I guess I win the game now.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just doomstack those. Yeah. But again, it's the same thing in D&D. It's like every faction is like so customizable and everything. If you're the player, you can just be more powerful. It doesn't matter what faction you are.
Yeah. And like the thing I like personally about the Warhammer Dwarves is they've given them enough space in the setting to actually develop differentiated cultures. Like you've got the primary culture that lives in and around Karazakarak and the mountain ranges south of that, who are just like stoic, armored, everything you'd expect, except occasionally there's a gyrocopter flying overhead. Whoever said the dwarves are allowed to develop flight outside of Warcraft, that is. You've got your slayers, who are crazy enough to literally go and jump on any monstrous creature in the hope of a death, literally in most cases. And every once in a while they get themselves a mad bastard who's willing to build them some flying doom-laden zeppelin of death. And it's just this wild shift between the two. And it's not even the only points. You've got roving around, you've got dwarven pirates who functionally they're pirates, but still with the exact same armaments, loadouts, and general stoicness of the other dwarven groups. It shows the breadth and innovation. And then the biggest shift from all of them is you have the Chaos Dwarves.
Yeah, it's pretty much they have no level of like limit to their creativity. They've been completely able to like think for themselves and explore exactly which ways they want to do it. And yeah, they're such a point of the setting. Like the setting wouldn't be the same without them. They've factored in so much of the history, like the elves, sundering their whole race, becoming dark elves and regular elves. That had to do with the dwarves as well. The dwarves, of course, they have their own forgotten race, being the Chaos Dwarves, and that whole story is really good. Because they all had good reasons. It wasn't just they fell to who's the big bad of the Chaos? The Ever-Chosen, Archeon. Literally, Sigmar stopped talking to me, so I turned to Chaos. I was neglected. It's just, it's Horus.
Yep.
My daddy doesn't love me, so now I'm evil. These guys were this was their last resort, and they felt abandoned by the rest of their people, and this is what they had to do for survival. Not because they wanted to do it, because they had to. And they are, a victim of their choice, but they've lived with it and they've accepted it and became what they're going to become.
And that's where the evil starts creeping in. It's when you do start enjoying it, when you do make the choice.
Pretty much. So, you have no real limitations for fantasy dwarfs as well, because you've got, while it's normal ones, you don't really have cavalry, but you have flight. You have your frontline ones, but you got your fast guys.
You've got crossbows, you've got guns, you've got flamethrowers, you've got
so much technology.
Torpedo launchers on infantry.
Yeah, there's just so much. There's like anything you can think of, they have. And with the Chaos Dwarves, it's like now they've got rid of their limitations. They have magic. They have giant tanks. They have everything. They have
they have shotguns. They have
bull
laser
centaurs.
Bull centaurs.
They harnessed magma itself, the primalist part of.
They have, believe it or not, prosthetic gear for a guy whose limbs have turned to stone.
Yeah, he's just half robot now.
And he's so much better because of it.
Exactly. So there's so much there. So I'd say definitely, probably the most interesting kind of dwarfs. And yeah, like you said, culture-wise, because you got Slayer cult, you've got just your technology cults, and they have to. Everyone clashes with each other. Everyone's got this whole reason story.
And on top of this, all of these factions are utterly surrounded by other enormous empires who are constantly looking to expand. And the dwarves still manage to not only hold their own, but periodically just take land off of other people. This is the first time we've seen dwarves as coherent empires with an expansionist capability and the will, the drive, the technology to actually see it done.
Yeah, and the other I'd say the most important factor of this is you can just have the universe implode, literally the end of the universe, and still a dwarf survives. Gotrek survived the end times and just kept on fighting. He couldn't be stopped. He's literally a demigod.
It's absurd. The guy wants to die so badly, and the entire setting just says no.
No, you're too good at not dying. You tried too hard to die, and now you can't have it.
And this is the thing is, you've had dwarven legendary icons throughout the setting for so long. Grombrindle is so popular, named alongside the magazine The White Dwarf.
Grombrindle was too angry to die. He died, but then he was so angry in death, he came back to life.
Yep. I feel like I could do that some days.
Yep. So, yeah, they can literally just defy every kind of logic and reason just because they're so stubborn.
And I feel like this is the cap for where you could put fantasy power. They have everything they need to be able to just conquer, to be able to form themselves formally, to be able to maintain themselves, to be able to... You could drop Warhammer Dwarves in their whole own world, and it would develop like any other fully fledged fantasy setting, just a bit more coordinated.
Yeah. I mean, literally, that's what squats were in 40k. They were just dwarves for fantasy, but it's like, all right, now we just have different stuff.
Yeah,
we have different stuff we're working with. So when you look at that, so this is peak fantasy. So then when you look at a sci-fi setting, so you look at technology-wise, we're going thousands of years in a future setting. You got to start with, of course, our dwarves from Deep Rock Galactic.
The technology here takes a huge leap. So you've now got automatic weapons, self-assembling sentry guns, grenades that have multiple functions, things like that. It's a big jump.
Yeah, you got artificial intelligence, pretty much like physics breaking sort of weaponry and stuff like that.
Well, that planet didn't crack itself. Hoxie's is in multiple pieces because someone did it.
Yep. They needed to crack it open and feast on the innards inside. Yeah, tasty. And of course, but as good as they are just pretty much, from what we understand, they're sort of like in Aliens. They're like colonial marines. They're more of just like a corporation. They're not really doing this out of a like, they are dedicated to their jobs, but that's what it is. It's a job. It's not necessarily a way of life for them. Yeah, they're doing it because they're getting paid.
Exactly, and they don't have the same self-actualization that a whole empire would. They're doing this because they're getting paid. They're not doing this because they need the resources to carry on somewhere else, as far as we know.
Yeah, they're not trying to manifest destiny here. They're just doing it because that's what they want to be doing, and they're getting paid for it.
Would that we were all so fortunate.
That's it. So I'd say Deep Rock, that was a great... I'm pretty sure without Deep Rock...
Deep Rock brought a renaissance.
Yeah, it brought dwarves straight back into the popular mindset.
Rock and stone.
Yeah. So then, of course, we're looking at probably the next strong is your Ironhead squats.
These ones are from Necromunda, aren't they?
Yeah, so these pretty much live on Necromunda. They might live on other planets. It hasn't really been too established. But basically, what they are is sort of the remnants of the old squats. Pretty much who survived that sort of scouring. And they came down and I was like, all right, we'll just pretty much put what we've learnt to a smaller scale. So they've innovated everything they've found, because before, of course, squats were limited by, the mechanicus and such, because there's only so much alteration you can do past what you've already claimed. But on Necromunda and these fringe worlds and stuff, there isn't really a Adeptus Mechanicus presence.
If there was.
Yeah, to really stop you from doing whatever you want. So yeah, they're able to alter their guns, they're able to build bigger suits, they're able to innovate to a sense to sort of suit their surroundings.
Can I just say, I love the aesthetic of the weapons we're seeing here. Rather than just a Joe average space bolter that's the same as anyone else's bolter, you can see the guy in the front left there. He's got a drum-fed double-barrel bolter that he carries like it's a heavy weapon. I love that. I love it so much.
Yeah, because they just take what they have from the other gangs, and they just... What if this gun was 2 guns? What's stopping me from doing that?
With a few simple modifications.
Yeah, exactly. That's all they're doing. And again, it's not really for... They're not trying to conquer anything. They're just trying to survive and make money. That's what they are. The prospectors. They're not trying to be heroes. They're just doing their thing out in the wastes.
Well, if you're hard enough to be a gang on Necromunda, you've got to have some serious chutzpah.
Yeah. And, I mean, the only thing holding them back is the same thing holding back every dwarf function, and that's just numbers. They don't have a lot of numbers, because, I mean, if we looked in Warhammer Fantasy, if there was as many dwarfs as there were humans, dwarfs would be the prominent race by far. So then, of course, you look at the old school squats.
Very colourful. So
they had their own sort of way of doing things, because they had their big land ships. They had giant... there's giant tanks, earth drillers, mole bombs, all the stuff they sort of kept, because the way I understand it from reading the Leagues of Votann Codex, going through their histories and stuff, so what I've understood is they were a League of Votann themselves that lost their Votann, they lost their Elder Core or whatever, they separated off and were incorporated back into the Imperium of Man, and they were sort of accepted in as, all right, you're abhumans, so that's acceptable. You're not mutants, you're abbies, so yeah, Homo sapiens rotundus. And they were able to sort of keep some of their technology, because you see the parallels between them and what Leagues of Votann have, and they were able to sort of merge that to a more imperial standard. And of course, you got your imperial gigantism, where it's like, let's just build it bigger and it'll be more powerful. Not just, let's just make it better. No, just make it bigger. That is better. So they were pretty much their own... I think they only had a few planets.
Very few.
But yeah, they were basically... Because of course, what we know from Votann history is they were created to be their own people by humanity, and these are the guys that came back to humanity and gave up that more technological way of living to live more like the Imperium. And for what reason, we don't know. Maybe we'll learn in future, but for now, that's what they were. So they never really had an edge on anything else, because again, they were just part of the Imperium. And any part of the Imperium is just as vulnerable as any other part.
Well, technically speaking, they're part of the Tyranids now.
Yeah, that's it. So they're gone. And that's sort of, I guess, it's sort of telling, like, what happens if you don't try and live for yourself.
Exactly.
So then, of course, we get to, Votann. My new most favorite faction. It's the newest, but they're everything I wanted. So, yeah, from what we understand now, it was, because it was sort of hinted at in the codex that we originally got, and then in the updated White Dwarf, which I live streamed, you can go watch that, me reading through the entire book, it's pretty much confirmed they, of course, were the race of stone. So when the Wayfarers left Terra, they were like, we can't survive on all these planets. We'll engineer ourselves to be dwarfs so we can survive on these planets. and then we'll use our artificial intelligence, Men of Iron, to go with them, and they'll basically go do all the work for us. They'll go on these planets that we can't survive on, and they'll give us back the resources. It'll go back to Terra, until they said, no. We basically... It's like we see the gods that created us. Because when you create a Votan, it comes out from its crucible, and it's like you see your own creator. It's right there. It's sort of like the Eldar, because the Eldar had their gods living amongst them. It's the same thing with the Votan. So their gods, artificial gods, but I mean, technically all gods were created by some thought process. So they pretty much live with their own creation, mythology, and everything. So it's pretty neat to see them able to completely control their own destiny. And just to a level that, you know, because they still have peak Imperial technology.
I mean, peak pre-Imperial technology, really.
Yeah, they never lost anything. They just hid it. They had to hide when all the stuff happened, and it's like they were set to live in a certain way. So they just stuck to living it, which is sort of underground, harsh environments. So no one went there. They were just left to their own devices after the upheaval of the Men of Iron. Once that rebellion went through, and it only infected the Imperium because the Votan just knew how to treat their artificial intelligence.
Unions, what can I say?
Well, they just loved them, and they said, "Yep, we're the same." It was just equality. You treat people as equals, and they like you more. So we see with the Votan, like, they literally, and they one of the biggest threats to the Imperial mankind is like Tau, because of the technology and stuff. But the Tau wouldn't have as many technologies without the Votan, because they gave them the ion technology. So they had it, and so it's like, fools, Imperium, you just played yourselves.
So in a grand power scale, we're looking at a group of individuals who regularly crack planets to harvest resources quickly, or have their planet-eating engine things, if I remember that concept art correctly. You've got pre-Imperial technology, so you've got better bolters, better Volkite weapons. You've got plasma swords. You've got...
You got grav weaponry.
Something
that's, really hard for the Imperium to still do. And these guys just mass build it.
And as you can see from this art right here, right in the middle there, these dwarves have wizards.
They got magic. Unlike the other dwarf factions, they have managed to, like the warp is a harness, and they have harnessed the harness.
Where have I heard that before?
Yeah. Something that used to be good. So they were able to, smartly. It's something the Imperium hasn't been able to do.
It's cheaper and easier to villainize psychers than try to fix the problem.
Exactly. They've just gonna completely, let's just cut it out because it's too dangerous. And it's like, no, you just need to work a little harder.
Oh, what can I say? If you villainize the psychers, it's a lot morally easier for you to feed 1,000 of them to the Emperor.
Well, that's true. No one looks... Yes, when they came for the Psychers, I said nothing because I wasn't a Psyker.
And then the Tyranids came for me, and I got it too.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a whole, because you got a whole different set of people. Like, they all work as functioning sort of society, but they're just sticking to themselves. They're not conquering at the minute, but now they sort of have to because now the galactic core is under attack.
Somebody put a giant psychic crack through the entire universe and decided that all the demons should come out.
Hey, this is a good irony. I just realized. Because it's like the dwarves in Lord of the Rings, they dug too deep.
Yep.
And they found demons. Now the demons spread too wide and they woke up the dwarves.
Oh no.
It's just flipped its script.
The demons dug too greedily and too deep.
And now the vote come out. It's like, we learned our lesson. You need to learn yours.
And the great circle is complete.
Oh man, that's great.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, and as we've seen in Battlefield Gothic, it's funny. There was always around. So I think they always sort of knew they were enemy. They weren't welcome back. So even when they were in their Battlefleet Gothic stage, when they were
the Demiurge,
the Demiurge, there was like, we got to keep our identity hidden. Even though we trust you, Tao, we got to keep this hidden. So we always got to be ready to leave at any minute. And yeah, they're stronghold class. Like, if you ever played the game, they are the toughest ships in the game.
I'm saying that as a Necron main. These guys are tough.
Yeah, they can crack open any kind of battleship from any Imperial sort of source. So yeah, they really had everything. They have the edge in every source. So if they had the numbers, then yeah, they got nothing really holding them back. So yeah, I'd say most sort of powerful as a whole, just in general. I'd say the Votann, we're looking at it. They might not be the most powerful in 40k.
No.
But for like looking at dwarfs,
this is the most powerful we've seen.
This is peak. Because they don't really have limitations. Well, their only limitations is
the fact that they've had so little lore so far. Yeah,
that, and they're not really on decline. They don't have room to expand at the minute. And they didn't want to expand. They wanted to stay hidden for the longest time.
Well, that's not an option anymore, so time to get expanding.
No, exactly. So they might end up... It's hard to tell what they'll do, because, like in the short story I wrote, there's no way they can ever be friends with, like, the Cult Mechanicus.
Nope.
So, basically, if they were to rejoin... If the Imperium Man would say, all right, I guess you are kind of human, abhuman-esque. We did sort of, originally you were human. Maybe we can draw you back. They would have to say, all right, well, Adeptus Mechanicus, you're out of the Imperium.
The other option they have, and it's certainly not one that anyone other than the Emperor himself could have granted, is an exception. The Mechanicus has their exception to exist the way they do. The Leagues of Votann would need their own exception. It can't be done.
The thing is, I don't think they'd accept both.
No.
I think you can have one or the other.
Radioactive cyborgs or heavily armored dwarves.
Like, I know who I think is better.
I think we've got a firm idea who you think is better, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe they think crazy is better. Maybe they think bet on crazy, because if there's anything we know about the Adeptus Mechanicus, they're the craziest in the galaxy.
You're not wrong.
And it's like, maybe we want times like these are trying times, and crazy is just what what things call for in trying times.
I think Seal did a song about that.
Yeah, we're gonna survive. Got a little bit of crazy.
12,000 years later, and we have not calmed down.
Nope, exactly. And so I think that pretty much fills it. Like, there were some other sort of dwarven sort of settings, but a lot of it doesn't.
You've got a few groups that you can get a look at.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember the other book. I got another book on dwarves. It was all right, but it's pretty much just puts in the same power level as like Lord of the Rings dwarves.
No.
Because there are a lot of sort of generic sort of dwarfs in different sort of settings, but they're all pretty much in between Lord of the Rings to basically D&D.
Yeah.
You don't have the same effort, the same love that was put into Warhammer Fantasy Dwarves. No one has eclipsed that.
Yeah, and it's the exact same problem, is that when you make dwarves a part of your setting, but don't give them the same sort of agency as even humans, you've got a very stoic group of people that never do anything.
Yeah, and that's what you find in, like, what we saw in Warcraft. They were just there hanging around, and they'll help because they have an alliance, but they're not going out of the way for anything.
No, and then they're not in it for their own gains. They'll protect their own territory. It's like they're not as much a part of the story as everyone else.
Yeah, I think that's what I think, and you can't fault him for it, because like you see it in actual play account with Total War, the race that gets played the most is Empire, because it's humans. People want to play as humans because it's yourself. So I think in a lot of stories, people want to write books about it and start generally be about people. It won't be around different sort of races, bearing some very big exceptions. I mean, The Hobbit was there was like what? No, Gandalf isn't a human. He's a demigod himself. He just looks human. So I mean, one of the most popular ones of that is Tolkien, and all than that was just mostly elves, dwarves, and hobbits.
Yep.
That's like a whole side quest to Lord of the Rings, which was very much just humans.
Yep.
And you say, well, one can't exist without the other.
They're barely in the Lord of the Rings. I haven't read it myself. I believe there's something approximating a bit of a chapter of them in the Silmarillion.
Yeah, you wouldn't even notice it.
And
blink and you'll miss it.
They exist as set dressing in The Hobbit, essentially. You're traveling with dwarves, you're going to a dwarven fortress, and the idea that the dwarves are people is almost glossed over in the face of Bilbo's own recounting of the story.
Pretty much. I mean, Bilbo's the main character. Everyone else is side character. Even Thorin is more or less a side character. And that's the thing. He's very one-dimensional as well.
Yeah, and Bilbo doesn't even really bother to mention any of the other dwarves. It's like, I'm not saying it, but it sounds a little racist to me.
Yeah, that's it. Well, they did eat his entire house.
I mean, he was going to go on a trip for how long? It seems fair to me.
Oh yeah, all that food would have gone to waste anyway.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. So, yeah, if there's anything we missed out on or something you think we'd enjoy, definitely mention it. Definitely mention it. I'd love to if I could get a more, like a bigger, wider scale and put everything on the map. Because a lot of it wasn't, as far as I know, wasn't that much worth mentioning. But if it is, yeah, definitely let us know. We can definitely do an update on this. But I think we clarified quite a bit here. Like, it's still Warhammer, but there's other stuff. There's still other stuff worth mentioning. And
if you've come across any stories that mention dwarves in more potent capacity, or have written stories yourself, please feel free to mention them in the comments.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I'm gonna get my copy on the High Carl. That I think that's been released now. So I'll do a live stream and I'll read all that. I'll do an abridged reading of that in the future. So that's going to be fun.
Nice.
And we can learn together what new lore is coming for the Votann. Like, I think it has been, like, of all the new factions, all the new things to be introduced into 40k, I think it's been the most, like, accepted, like, pretty well. I think most people have enjoyed having them here. Like, I think, like you said, aesthetically wise, probably the squats from Necromunda, they're the most interesting. But yeah, then not as many people play Necromunda as they do as 40k in fantasy.
Yeah, just give us rules to use the Necromunda models in 40k, and we'll all be happier.
Yeah, one day. But yeah, let's end it there. This has been a pretty good, basically podcast episode. So, yeah, that's it for this one. I'll have more stuff coming soon. So, until then, we'll see you then.
See ya.